Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com for non-boxing sports picks. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. First, just a few brief comments on Miguel Cotto, right? I really feel that this Cotto fight is going to be absorbed by the public in waves. Right? The pay-per-view crowd saw the fight. Okay, good for them. Right? Harold Letterman had Saul Alvarez winning the fight on the HBO pay-per-view telecast. Right? Saul Alvarez, younger fighter, very popular. Right? Looks like he has more of a future just because of the 10-year age gap. Right? Than Miguel Cotto does in the sport. Right? Now, let me just say, I understand that most of the people here online believe that Canelo won the fight. I understand the CompuBox numbers have Canelo with an edge, right? You've heard me here say that's not the fight I saw. I thought Miguel Cotto won the fight, right? Well, Miguel Cotto now was given an interview, and understand Cotto's been boxing a long time. Cotto feels that he won 8 rounds, right? 8. Now, let's just say that the consensus has emerged. People like Jackie Callan, who used to be James Toney's manager, right? Floyd Mayweather. They've come out and they thought the scoring stunk, right? I'm expecting there to be a public outcry when the rest of the world sees the fight, when the fight actually gets shown on non-pay-per-view TV. All I can say is a fighter the stature of Miguel Cotto should not be treated this way by the judges. Right? When a world-class fighter, and I know Floyd thinks Canelo won the fight, but when a world-class fighter like Floyd Mayweather sees the tape of the fight and then says, hey, it's ridiculous, right? This is a farce, right? That lets you know that something here was not on the up and up, right? I'm not accusing anyone of outright corruption, but something here in this fight is just not right. Let me just say, too, when a trainer who's been in world-class fights, Freddie Roach, thinks his man's winning the fight. That's what Roach said, right? He thought his guy outboxed Canelo. And then you're hearing that one judge has Freddie Roach's fighter winning 1 round, and another judge has Roach's fighter winning 2 rounds. Something is just not right. Now, we'll see what the mood is on this fight next week, right? I think the judges really took away a moment from all of us. Even if you think Canelo won the fight, and most of you do, I'll concede that, even though I'm perplexed by it, right? But most of you think Canelo won the fight. I've read the comments to my earlier post-fight video. Okay, fair enough. But we got robbed of a moment, because when this fight is reviewed, people are going to have to concede that the judging was off. Let me just say, this is like, having some kind of, track and field event where then we say, oh, you know what, the stopwatch was off. Don't believe the times. You can't do that. Come on now. Let's shift gears too. Boxing's a competitive sport. You see a fight, one guy might be the better guy that night. Especially when, the fighters are using strategies that, quite frankly, the loser might not use in a rematch. Now, don't consider this a prediction. I'm just talking as a gambler here, not as someone who's making a prediction on anything. I'm just looking for value. The line right now on the Kovalev-Pascal fight is ridiculous. Jean Pascal is a plus 950 underdog. That is outrageous. Plus 950. Folks need to realize that Kovalev got dropped by Darnell Boone. Didn't Kovalev recently get dropped by Blake Caparello? Right? Didn't Bernard Hopkins, in a fight in which Bernard is getting shelled, go 12 rounds with Kovalev? Now, I know Pascal just lost to Kovalev, but now Pascal has changed trainers. Now he's with Freddie Roach. Right? Pascal's a guy who knocked down Bernard Hopkins twice in a fight. Right? Pascal beat Lucien Boutte. Sometimes the odds are so ridiculous, even before you know who's going to win the fight, you understand the value involved. Right? I believe Pascal at plus 950 is a position you need to take today. We'll figure out the rest later. Understand, if the odds shift, if, people, start to even up the fight, if money floods in on, let's say, the Pascal side of the ledger, at these odds, I expect it to. Well, understand, later you could always hedge the play when you're getting a plus 950 on one side of the play. If I believe there's going to be a replay and Kovalev is going to get the knockout, understand I'm insured. If I can get Kovalev by KO at, let's say, a minus 800 or better, right? There'll be a gap there that I could profit from because I'm getting a plus 950 on the Pascal side of the play. Let me tell you another line that seems to me to be just downright ridiculous. Who's the big-time fighter that Luis Ortiz has beaten? The heavyweight. Now, I've seen Brian Jennings in the ring with Vladimir Klitschko go the distance. Right? I've seen Brian Jennings overcome a sluggish start and come back and beat Mike Perez. Right? Somehow the casino right now has Brian Jennings, who personally I think should be favored in the fight. They have him as greater than a 2-to-1 underdog. Hey, look, as I like to say, no need to put a bow on the package. Sign me up. Wrap it up. I'll take it. I think you need a position on Brian Jennings right here at a plus 210. It's November 24th, 2015. Here again, keep in mind, my game is just to get a position because I think there's value there. Right? If the line then shifts, you can be on both sides of the play, depending on how much the line shifts. But one wonders what Luis Ortiz these guys have been watching. Was it the victory over Latif Coyote? I mean, that's a head-scratching line. Now let's talk about the heavyweight championship fight. I don't even consider this a value play. I'm actually expecting the reign of Vladimir Klitschko to end when he steps in the ring against Tyson Fury. Now, let me be clear here. Right? I took Miguel Cotto against Canelo. Right? The hedge I called for in the Timothy Brandon Rios fight didn't work. Right? Rios actually got stopped off body shots. Right? So I'm serious in the intro to these videos when I say the opinion you should follow should be your own. Right? I know that at times here online, I'm taking people like Fury who are greater than 3-to-1 underdogs to win fights. Right? Look, gambling involves risks. I'll take educated risks here. Now let me say this. In my opinion, boxing really does come down to angles. Right? I really feel that some guys just have the sport figured out better than others. Right? We'll say that they're better at math. They read the angles better. They have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. They're less predictable. Right? If the pocket collapses, they can operate with their back against the ropes up close, right? If the right's not getting home, they can shift the southpaw, you know, change the angles on you, figure out how to make it happen. Now, let me just ask the obvious question. And I understand. Klitschko's been champ for years, and I understand the mood here online is passionately pro-Klitschko. Right? I know Klitschko looks like he's the better athlete. Right? He has a body with very little body fat. Tyson Fury, by contrast, is balding. He has, flab. I'm just here to tell you, I was raised in the Larry Holmes era. Holmes remains one of the best fighters I've ever seen. Understand, Larry Holmes had some flab on him. It's only recently that all of these heavyweights look like Adonis. Right? I'm accustomed to some very good fighters having some flab on them. I lived through the Julio Cesar Chavez era. Great fighter. Great fighter. Right? He wasn't a guy who came in looking ripped like Timothy Bradley. But, really, few have hit harder. In fact, Abel Sanchez openly admits that he's trying to model his fighter, Gennady Golovkin, after Julio Cesar Chavez. So Tyson Fury, however his body looks, the guy's an athlete. The guy's coordinated. You don't even realize how tall he is. Right? The jab looks beautiful. He's a switch hitter. Right? Only one of these guys goes to the body well, and it's Tyson Fury. Now, let me just say this to the Klitschko crowd. Has anyone figured out what's going to happen? What Klitschko's going to do if he can't land his jab? Just a real simple question. What's the Tyson Fury fight you've seen where Tyson Fury's getting battered with a jab? Where you see his head snapping back and he's making no adjustments? Right? Now, I know the Klitschko people are saying, look, our fighter is much more aggressive against taller fighters. Hey, man, I'm rolling with Tyson Fury here. Trust me when I say nobody wants Klitschko to be more aggressive than Tyson Fury supporters. You know what? Open it up. I don't want Klitschko hiding behind some jab and, not doing much else. Look at the Sultan Ibragimov fight. I don't want that fight. I want Klitschko in there actually trying to push the issue. Right? I hope Klitschko fights this fight like he fought the Tony Thompson rematch. Because when you open up against better fighters, guys who are better at math, guys who are accurate, guys who know the angles, guys who can fight you on their back foot or their front foot, guys who can actually go to the body, guys who can smother you. Look at the Tyson Fury-Steve Cunningham fight. Right? No one would be happier than Tyson Fury if Vladimir Klitschko decides he wants to make this a shootout. Think about the personalities. The cautious fighter is Vladimir Klitschko. Right? Some guy who's always cautious and who's, afraid to do things and stuff, suddenly he's going to try to come out of his shell one night. Right. I'll buy that when I see that. Right? Now let me offer some advice to Tyson Fury. Right? And I understand 10 videos out of 11 online are picking the favorite. Right? I understand Vegas has, Klitschko as the heavy favorite. Right? Klitschko looks unbeatable now. Right? The same guy who got dropped twice by Sam Peter. Right? The same guy who, hit the canvas against Layman Brewster and then later claimed that he felt he was drugged. right? The same guy who was fighting at home got stopped by Ross Purity. The same guy who met Corey Sanders in the middle of the ring and ended up losing. I consider Vladimir Klitschko to be a Hall of Famer. No question about it. Right? Vladimir Klitschko has earned his belt. No question about it. But people need to understand that we're all human. Nobody is innately unbeatable. Right? Rocky Marciano had his Roland La Starza fight. Right? Floyd Mayweather had his Castillo fight. Right? There are fights out there where legitimately, in fact, Harold Letterman had Floyd Mayweather losing that first Castillo fight. Right? For all of you who believe Letterman's scoring is bulletproof. Right? Well, let me just say, even unbeaten fighters have very tough nights out. Ricardo Lopez, great fighter. Even he had a draw on his record. Look that up. Right? Vladimir Klitschko hasn't fought anybody, in my opinion, as good as Tyson Fury for several years. Right? Several years. Understand, too, while Vladimir Klitschko looks to be in great shape, and he is, he's almost 40 years old. Right? So, my advice to Fury is simply, when he shows up in Germany, right? And nobody knows how hard it is to win in Germany more than guys like Martin Murray, right? But when he shows up in Germany, the night of the fight, right, what he needs to realize is that, in my opinion, his skills are better than Vladimir Klitschko's, right? That's what I mean when I say the better math guy, right? His skills are better. What he needs to do is to just block everything else out. To hell with the crowd. To hell with the hype. Right? To hell with the ring entrance. Right? When he walks into the ring, he needs to just be looking down. Right? He doesn't even need to thrive off the moment. Some fighters, you can tell, they get into the crowd. I see Manny Pacquiao entering the ring, Ali back in the day. They'll look at the crowd and you could tell they're like into it. You know what I mean? It's lifting their game, right? If I'm Tyson Fury, I don't worry about the crowd. The German crowd's not going to be with him. Let's get real here, right? I know David Haye traveled and won the heavyweight title. David Haye is a more loved fighter than Tyson Fury. If I'm Tyson Fury, I don't even worry about the celebrity part of the event, right? You know, when you're in the ring, some guys enter the ring and then they, steer across the ring when their opponent enters and they're trying to show the opponent, hey man, look, I'm here. It's going to be a tough night for you and stuff like that. Look at the film on the Kubrat Pulev, Vladimir Klitschko fight, right? Pulev's trying to prove he's a tough guy so much that after he gets dropped, he gets back up and he's trying to look at Vladimir Klitschko as if to prove to him, hey man, look, I'm still here to fight. To hell with all that. Right? To hell with all that. Right? Forget the show component. Forget the show business component. Right? When you enter the ring, don't even bother waste your time looking across the ring and seeing Vladimir with Vitaly. Right? Because Vitaly's going to be there, and both guys looking at you, right? It's Klitschko Nation and stuff, wearing Hugo Boss robes and stuff like that. Forget about all that. When you're in the middle of the ring and some guys try to steer holes in your head, right? Ray Leonard, right? Some guys are trying to look tough and stuff like that. Don't even do that, man. When you get to the middle of the ring, look away. Do a Terry Norris. Just touch gloves and look away. Don't even care about the other guy. The point is simply this. If you focus on your game, if you focus on your execution, right, you should do better than the other guy. To me, it's that simple. Understand the way these lines work. Whenever you have a long-time heavyweight champion, whenever the guy has knocked off legitimate opponents, right? He's beaten Tony Thompson twice. He's the only guy to give Kubrat Pulev a loss. He beat Mariusz Wach. Right? Vladimir Klitschko has done a great job. He beat David Haye. Right? He's done a great job against legitimate opponents. Right? Whenever you have that situation, and whenever we all know the guy has big power, right? He's stopping guys, right? Maybe not Mariusz Wach, but he stopped other guys, right? He beat Alexander Povetkin, right? Didn't stop him, but, beat him. Whenever you have a guy like that, he's going to be a big favorite, especially when the opponent doesn't look like an athlete and socially isn't a fan favorite, right? But just understand the history of boxing. Titles change hands, right? Even Joe Louis lost eventually, right? Over time, these long-standing champions sooner or later are going to meet someone. If they continue on in the sport, they're going to meet someone who's going to beat them, right? I've seen guys who look like they're on the verge of long reigns. Mike Tyson, Riddick Bowe, Lennox Lewis, right? And then these guys get derailed, right? So all I'm saying is, to Tyson Fury, forget the crowd. Your audience is just the judges. You got to convince 3 people, right? And all I'm saying is just be prepared. It's no trip. If you're in there and Vladimir Klitschko thinks you're a punk and wants to try to open up on you, take him out. You know what I mean? Have your plan where you say, okay, great, so he's being aggressive. Okay, here's my plan B in handling him if he's out of his shell and stuff like that. Let me tell you what's not going to happen. Vladimir Klitschko's not going to be able to land a lot of jabs on Tyson Fury. That's number 1. Number 2, Vladimir Klitschko's not going to be able to clinch Tyson Fury or tuck him under his arm. Right? Number 3, Vladimir Klitschko's not going to be able to open up and then suddenly have Fury running away from him in the corner like Tony Thompson did. This is a different opponent. I believe he's really a pure math guy. In other words, I believe he's looking at the film and he understands he should win this fight. Right? So, I know I sound like a whack job. Look, I know I lost on the Cotto fight. Okay, fair enough. I understand. Even Floyd Mayweather thinks that Canelo won the fight. Okay, fair enough. I understand too. Many of you have criticized me for not being sensitive to the politics of boxing. And I understand that, I was dumbfounded. It was way over my head when I was hearing the scoring for the Cotto fight, and then I thought, whoa, that judge just gave Cotto 1 round. I admit there's a political component to the sport that might impact scoring. But all I'm saying is, the guy who's going to do better when Fury steps in the ring against Klitschko, in my opinion, is going to be Tyson Fury. Right? Fury's one of the better heavyweights to come along in a long time. Right? I consider Fury to be much better. Right? Much better than Deontay Wilder, who is unbeaten and has a title right now. Right? I consider Fury to really have an edge on everyone in the heavyweight division except maybe Alexander Povetkin. I think that style matchup would be tough for Fury. Fortunately for him, Povetkin seems to be in the Deontay Wilder side of the pairings and contender status. But let's just say Vladimir Klitschko, to me, will have an experience edge in handling big fights. I'll agree Fury is a bit unstable at times. But if he enters the ring focused with his A game, I'm serious. I just don't think there's anything Vladimir Klitschko can do. Right? Vladimir Klitschko thinks he's more, active against big guys. Let him bring it. Let him try. In my opinion, that'll play into Fury's hands. Right? Let me also add that I know many people are concerned that Fury got dropped by Steve Cunningham. After all, Cunningham's not the biggest heavyweight. Cunningham certainly doesn't hit like Vladimir Klitschko. Guys like Tomas Ademic have gone the distance against Steve Cunningham. Right? What's disturbing, too, is when you look at the film, Fury's hands are down around his waist. Right? It's as if Fury was completely unprepared for that moment. I'll say, sometimes those moments are the best things to happen to a fighter. Ali, look it up, got dropped by Sonny Banks. Right? Ali got dropped by Henry Cooper. Right? Vladimir Klitschko himself has been dropped in fights, as I've mentioned earlier. Right? Fighters need to taste their own mortality. Right? They need to have that moment where they've been on the canvas. Right? They understand, hey, I could be put on the canvas. And then they get off the canvas and then they get back to work. Right? Floyd Mayweather, quite frankly, should have been called knocked down against Zab Judah. Right? No one knows better that he is vulnerable to being KO'd than Manny Pacquiao, who got KO'd early in his career. Right? So let me say this. Yeah. Tyson Fury got sloppy against Steve Cunningham. It's not how you start, it's how you finished. He then came back, decided to work Cunningham inside, made his size an issue in a way, quite frankly, that Vladimir Klitschko could not. Right? So, my advice to Fury is to not get distracted by the bright lights and the big moment. I don't think he is going to be distracted because look at his track record. He's fought some high-profile fights. That fight against Derek Chisora, that was a big event in the UK. Right? If I'm Fury, I just show up and I just understand that I'm the better math guy. I'm the more skilled guy. Right? I don't have to deal with the hype. I don't even have to win the stare down before the fight. Right? I just need to know that this man's jab is not going to touch me. When I go southpaw, if he opens up, that's an opportunity for me because the chances of him going to my body are slim. The chances of him, clinching me are slim. Right? Fury fights better on his back foot than Vladimir Klitschko. Right? So I like Fury in this fight. I've been calling it for months. Many of you have warned me. Like you've said, Dwyer, you're crazy. How could anyone expect a decision against Vladimir Klitschko in Germany? Well, let's just say either Tyson Fury wins or it's going to be an obvious robbery. I'm expecting that type of margin. At these odds, though, I am going to play it safe. Since you're getting, even today, greater than 3-1 odds on Tyson Fury to win the fight, you might as well hedge the play with Klitschko by KO. Right? That's how I see it. Right? Understand, this very type of bet blew up on me just recently in the Timothy Bradley-Brandon Rios fight. Just understand it is filled with risks. Right? That's the risk I'm taking. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here online. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. I'm just sharing mine. Thanks for stopping by.